Vale was not like other aliens from Zarnak. He was a scout, a watcher, trained to gather secrets. His skin was pale blue, his eyes large and silver, always searching. He had studied hundreds of planets, but this one called Earth felt different. The Council on Zarnak believed humans were weak. They laugh, cry, and waste time with emotions. They said, they are violent, but foolish. So they sent Vale to watch humans closely. He was ordered to study their weapons, their wars, and their minds. Vale landed on Earth during the night. His ship was small and silent, like a shadow. In the sky, he used his cloaking suit to blend in with the trees. From the top of a hill, he looked down at a wide, empty desert, but it wasn't empty for long. Massive metal machines rolled into view, tanks, trucks, and long tubes with sharp heads missiles. Humans in green uniforms walked around with calm faces. Some laughed, some drank coffee, some sat alone. Vale pressed a button on his arm. A recording lens zoomed in on the soldiers. They look soft, he whispered. Then, he heard a loud voice from a speaker. Test firing begins in 30 seconds. Vale stood still, curious. The first tank turned its cannon and fired. A sound like thunder ripped through the air. A shell flew across the desert and hit a fake mountain. The explosion made the ground shake. Rocks flew high into the sky. Dust covered the air like smoke from a volcano. When the dust cleared, the mountain was gone. Not broken, not cracked, gone. Vale blinked twice, his heart beating faster. Then came the missile test. A large rocket launched straight up into the sky. It climbed higher and higher, and then boom! A blinding light filled the air like a second sun. The heat washed over the land, and the shockwave knocked birds out of the sky. Vale fell to his knees, his body trembling. He had seen explosions before. He had watched battlefields across the stars. But never had he seen such power from a species that still used metal tools. This isn't right, he whispered. This isn't normal. He scanned the area again. The humans were calm, almost bored. One soldier even yawned. To them, this was nothing. Vale began sending the footage back to Zarnak Command. He added a note. Earth weapons are more powerful than our estimates, potential threat level high. He didn't know that his message would be ignored. Back on Zarnak, the leaders laughed. Human tricks, they said. Old machines with big noise. But Vale wasn't laughing. He continued to watch for days, and the more he saw, the more confused he became. Humans had power, yes, but they didn't act like conquerors. They didn't invade each other daily. They built cities, played music, and helped strangers. Vale watched a soldier give his food to a stray dog. Another soldier was crying while reading a letter. One more was planting flowers near his post. This makes no sense, Vale said aloud. A species with this much power should rule their planet by force. But they choose not to. One night, a human soldier noticed something strange. Vale's cloaking suit glitched for a second during a lightning storm. A man named Cole turned quickly, rifle raised. He saw a blue shimmer behind the trees. Who's there? Cole shouted, stepping closer. Vale froze, his heart racing. His suit flickered again, this time fully revealing him. Cole raised his gun, but then paused. His eyes widened, but he didn't shoot. Instead, he lowered the rifle slowly. You okay, buddy? Cole asked. Vale didn't speak, didn't move. He expected fear, or maybe violence, but Cole smiled slightly. You lost or something? Vale took a step back, unsure, but Cole didn't chase him. He pulled a water bottle from his belt and rolled it toward Vale, then turned around and walked back toward camp. Vale stared at the bottle. In that moment, he understood something terrifying. Humans didn't need to fight to prove strength. They could destroy mountains, but chose to give water instead. And that scared him more than any weapon ever could. Back. On Zarnak, the transmission from Vale arrived. The High Command gathered in the war chamber to review his footage. Giant screens showed the Earth's desert shaking. Explosions lit up the sky, and even the air seemed to burn. But the commanders just smirked. Our warships have armor stronger than steel. One said, humans simply like fireworks. Another added they thought Vale was overreacting still to be safe. They uploaded the data into Zarnok's battle simulation system. The goal was simple. Compare Earth's weapons to Zarnok's technology. A calm voice from the computer spoke. Beginning combat test 8743. Zarnok fleet versus human defense grid. Vale, still on Earth, waited nervously for a reply. He had seen things no simulation could explain. He had felt heat on his skin from miles away. He had watched soldiers act peacefully despite holding deadly power. On Zarnok, the first simulation began. It showed 10 Zarnok warships entering Earth orbit. Within seconds, Earth's satellites responded. Lasers fired. Kinetic rods dropped from space. 7 warships were destroyed before they even reached the clouds. Run again, the commander said sharply. They adjusted ship tactics, shields, and stealth modes. Beginning test 8744, the system announced. This time, Earth launched an EMP burst from orbit. Zarnok systems failed instantly, and their ships crashed into the ocean. The room fell silent. Even the smug ones started to worry. No, this can't be right, one whispered. They ran the test a third time, then a fourth, then 20 more. Each result was worse than the last. In every version, Earth won, not because they were smarter, but because their weapons ignored Zarnok logic. They were brutal, simple, too fast to counter. And the worst part? The humans didn't even send soldiers. It was all automatic, no blood, no hesitation. Back on Earth, Vale sat in silence inside a cave near the base. He had built a small shelter and hid from human sensors. But every day he watched. He observed their training drills, weapon storage, and most strangely their kindness. One morning, he saw a soldier trip and drop a weapon. The gun didn't explode, didn't fire. It shut itself down with a red, blinking light. Safety first. The humans feared their own weapons. That's when Vale started thinking, maybe that's why they don't attack others. He said to himself, not because they are afraid of losing, but because they are afraid of winning too easily. The next day, Vale received a coded message from Zarnok High Command. Simulations show high risk, the message read. Continue surveillance. Prepare for deeper infiltration. Vale didn't like that order. He had come to observe, not to spy deeper, but he knew better than to argue. So he planned his next move, to get closer to the humans. That night, a small drone buzzed over the camp. Vale followed it from a distance. Watching through his visor, it hovered above the soldiers, recording their movements. Then one of the humans raised a strange-looking gun and fired a net into the air. The drone crashed in seconds. The humans weren't stupid. They knew they were being watched. Vale returned to his shelter and thought hard. If he got any closer, he might be caught. But if he didn't, Zarnok might send someone else, someone more dangerous. Someone who wouldn't hesitate to start a war. He had to understand more. He had to see not just the weapons, but the people. Who held them? What kind of species build such terrifying machines? Then chooses to laugh, farm, dance, and raise families instead. Vale opened his personal log and recorded a message to himself. Day 9 on Earth. Humans are more dangerous than I expected, but not because of their weapons, because they choose not to use them, because they choose peace. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there Zarnok was watching, planning, calculating, and if they didn't understand what he now understood, then they were walking straight into disaster. But Vale couldn't stop them yet, not without proof, not without seeing more. And so he stepped out of the shadows and walked toward the human camp, not as a spy, but as someone trying to understand why the most powerful species he had ever seen was also the quietest when it came to war. The night air was cold in the desert. Vale moved quietly through the shadows, his cloaking suit flickering every few steps. It had been damaged slightly by the storm 2 nights ago. He tried to fix it with basic tools, but Earth's dust and humidity made repairs difficult. Still, He had made a choice. He had to get closer. Zarnak Command wanted more information, but Vale wanted answers. Why were humans so calm, even with weapons that could destroy continents? He followed the same path each night, through the rocks, down into the canyon. The human camp wasn't far now. A few soldiers stood guard, their helmets glowing faintly under the stars. But they weren't tense. They talked, shared snacks, and even told jokes. Vale moved closer, hiding behind a supply crate. He didn't realize a silent alarm had already detected his faint energy signature. Inside the camp, a soldier named Cole adjusted his gear. He was older than most, scar on his cheek, steady hands, eyes that missed nothing. He heard a quiet beep in his earpiece. Zone 3 possible cloak breach. Cole grabbed his flashlight and rifle, but he didn't sound the alarm. Something told him to check alone. He walked slowly toward the edge of camp. Vale saw him coming and froze. His suit flickered again, showing part of his lead blue skin against the black night. Cole raised his rifle but didn't shoot. Instead, he narrowed his eyes. "All right?" he said calmly. "You've been watching us long enough." Vale stayed perfectly still. The human stepped closer. "I'm not here to hurt you," Cole said, lowering his weapon slightly. "I just want to know why you're sneaking around." Vale hesitated, then slowly stood up. His suit gave one last flicker and shut down completely, now fully visible. He stood before the human, slim, pale blue, silver eyes glowing in the dark. Cole didn't move. He didn't aim, didn't run. He simply looked at Vale and said, "Damn. You're real." Vale expected shouting, panic, maybe violence. Instead, Cole reached into his pack and pulled out a granola bar. He tossed it toward Vale's feet. "Hungry?" Vale blinked in confusion. He didn't know what to say or even how to respond. This man had a weapon, a clear shot, and authority, but instead of fear, he offered food. Cole sat down on a rock nearby. "You're not the first thing I've seen out here," he said casually. "Last year we had glowing orbs, walking trees, and something that looked like a talking cat." Vale tilted his head. "I'm not a cat," he said softly. Cole laughed. "Well, that's good." They sat in silence for a few moments. Then Cole spoke again. "Let me guess, your people think we're dangerous." Vale nodded slowly. "Yes. Your weapons are beyond expected limits." Cole looked up at the stars. "Yeah, they are, but we don't want to use them," he added, his voice softer now. "Not again." Vale studied him. "You're not afraid of us?" Cole shook his head. "No, not afraid," he said. "But we are careful." "Careful?" "We've seen what war can do," Cole said. "We've seen cities burn, oceans poisoned, families wiped out. We built big weapons so that no one would ever try to hurt us again. And now we try not to use them, because we know how easy it would be to win and lose everything." Vale looked at the man differently now. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a warning wrapped in kindness. He carried death on his back, but offered life in his hand. "You're strange," Vale said. Cole smiled. "You should meet my ex-wife." Vale didn't understand the joke, but something about it made him feel safe. Maybe for the first time on this planet, he didn't feel like an enemy or an invader. He felt like a student, sitting in the middle of a lesson written in human blood and laughter. Cole stood up and stretched. "You gonna keep hiding in the rocks?" Vale paused, then said, "No." "Good," Cole replied. "Then you can help me dig a trench tomorrow." "What is a trench?" "You'll find out." As Cole walked back toward the camp, he said one last thing over his shoulder. "Just don't touch my coffee." Vale stood alone in the night. A trench, coffee, laughter, kindness, and enough firepower to destroy half the galaxy. These humans were confusing. They terrified him, and yet he was beginning to admire them. He activated his recorder and spoke quietly. "Day 12, Earth. I have made contact." The human did not attack. He offered food, information, and trust. Conclusion: they are not peaceful because they are weak. They are peaceful because they are strong enough not to be cruel. He turned off the recorder and looked toward the camp. A fire was burning softly in the middle. and laughter echoed through the night. Vale took one slow step forward, then another, and walked toward the warmth. Vale didn't sleep that night. He sat near the campfire, watching it flicker and dance like a living thing. Around him, the humans talked, laughed, and sometimes just sat in silence. They treated him like a guest, not a threat, even though they knew he was from another world. Cole handed him a thick book, worn and full of torn pages. "History," Cole said. "You want to understand us? Start here." Vale opened it carefully. There were picture cities in flames, soldiers in muddy trenches, mushroom clouds rising into the sky. Each image told a story of horror, of war, of loss. But between the destruction were moments of peace handshakes, rebuilding hugs between enemies. Vale asked quietly, "Why would you keep records of such pain?" Cole shrugged. "So we don't forget," he said, "and don't make the same mistakes again." Vale read for hours, flipping through wars he had never heard of. He saw names like Hiroshima, Vietnam, Berlin, and Baghdad. He saw faces young, men smiling before battle, women crying over rubble. Then photos of people protesting war, planting peace flags, rebuilding schools. "What happened to your world?" Vale asked. "How did it survive all this?" Cole didn't answer right away. He took a sip of his black coffee and looked at the stars. "We almost didn't," he said. "We came close. Too close." Cole stood up and walked toward a small metal door near the back of the camp. He unlocked it and led Vale down into a bunker. Cool air touched Vale's skin, and lights flickered on with a buzz. The walls were lined with more books, old screens, and dusty helmets. "This," Cole said, "is where my grandfather served." They stopped in front of a large screen. Cole pressed a button, and a video began. It was black and white, shaky but clear enough. A tall man in a suit was speaking into a microphone. "Mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind." Vale watched, eyes wide. More clips followed: marshes for peace, nuclear test footage, crying children, broken homes, and then silence. A single image stayed on screen. Earth from space, small and blue, floating alone. After that, Cole said quietly, "We started to change. Not fast, not perfect, but slowly we began to fear what we'd become. We built bigger weapons, but used them less. Not because we became kinder, but because we learned fear." Vale looked at him. "You feared yourselves?" Cole nodded. "We still do." They walked back up to the surface. The night was almost over, the stars fading as the first light of morning touched the sky. The camp was quiet now, some soldiers resting, others writing in small notebooks. Vale sat again near the fire, the book still in his hand. He thought of Zarnuk, of how his people celebrated conquest, wrote songs of victory, and erased defeat from their records on Earth. Humans remembered everything, even the shame, especially the shame. Vale turned on his recorder again. Day 13. Humans fear their own strength. They study their wars not to celebrate, but to prevent more. This is wisdom, not weakness. He closed the book, then looked at Cole. "You said you changed," Vale asked. "But if your weapons are so powerful, what stops you from using them again?" Cole looked at the horizon and replied softly. "We still argue," he said. "We still make mistakes. But now every leader knows one wrong move, and no one wins. So we avoid that move." Vale nodded slowly. That answer chilled him more than any threat. Earth had learned control, not because of kindness, but because they had tasted their own destruction and didn't want another bite. As the sun rose, Cole stretched and said, "You hungry?" Vale smiled faintly. "I'm starting to like your coffee." "You're a brave soul," Cole chuckled. "Most aliens can't survive it." They shared a quiet breakfast, bread, eggs, and laughter between bites. But in Vale's mind, something had changed forever. These humans, these smiling, joking, coffee-drinking beings, had looked into the abyss and stepped back. That was true strength. And Vale knew if Zarnok ever challenged them, it wouldn't be a battle, it would be A lesson written in fire. Vale sat under a quiet sky, his fingers tapping nervously on the communication pad. The desert winds whispered around him, carrying the warmth of Earth's rising sun. Behind him, the human camp was waking, soldiers moving, voices rising, coffee boiling, but Vale wasn't calm. Not today. He had recorded everything. The firepower, the control, the human logic, the human heart. He had watched them laugh beside weapons that could end worlds. He had seen kindness and discipline live in the same hand, and now he was afraid, not for Earth but for Zarnok. He activated the long-range link and uploaded his full report to the Zarnok High Council. Every second of footage, every scanned weapon, every recorded conversation with Cole. At the end of the transmission, Vale added his own message. Earth is not to be attacked. Humanity is not fragile. They are measured. A war with them will not be war. It will be collapse. Do not test their silence, for it is not weakness. It is mercy. He sent the file with a silent prayer. Though Zarnok had no gods, then he waited. Minutes turned into hours. The camp bustled with drills and orders, but Vale barely noticed. At sunset, his pad beeped. Message received. Response from High Council. 12 seconds. Vale opened it, and his heart sank. Scout Vale, your transmission is noted. However, your emotional language suggests compromised thinking. Prepare for reassignment. Fleet 1 will arrive in Earth orbit within 72 Earth hours. Objective: tactical demonstration and retrieval of Earth's weapon core samples. Your new orders: stand by for extraction. Vale's hand dropped to his side. They had ignored everything. Not only ignored it, but decided to attack. Not diplomacy, not caution. Demonstration, they called it. He stood up quickly and stormed toward the camp. He had to warn them. He had to tell Cole. But how do you warn someone who is already prepared for everything? He found Cole near a supply truck, polishing a strange-looking rifle. Cole, Vale said, trying to stay calm. The soldier looked up, immediately noticing the panic in Vale's face. They're coming, Vale said. Who? My people. Cole set the weapon down. How many ships? I don't know. Big ones? Yes, Cole nodded slowly, like he had expected this all along. All right, Cole said. I'll tell command. That's it? Vale asked, stunned. You're not surprised? Cole looked at him seriously. I was hoping we had more time, he said. But Earth doesn't bet on hope alone. Within 20 minutes, the camp transformed. Communications scrambled. Satellites activated. Weapons unlocked from storage. No one panicked. No one screamed. Orders were given calmly, like flipping a switch in a machine that had been built long ago, just in case. Vale stood in the middle of it all, feeling like he had fallen behind time itself. How are they so ready? He whispered. Cole walked past him with a data chip. Because we've made the mistake before, he said, of waiting too long to believe a threat. Vale's communication pad beeped again, this time a private message from his old mentor. On Zarnok, I tried to stop them, the message read. But the Council is blinded by pride. They believe humans will surrender once they see our ships. I fear they are walking into fire with their eyes closed. Vale clenched his fists. He had done everything. He had sent the warnings, shared the proof, even pleaded, and still. Zarnok wanted war. Cole handed him a headset. If you want to help, you can sit in tactical. I thought I was the enemy, Vale said. You were. Cole smiled. Now you're just another guy trying to stop something stupid. That night, the stars above Earth seemed to flicker. With tension, somewhere beyond the moon, Zarnok warships moved silently. They were sleek, polished, and armed with plasma cannons powerful enough to erase cities. But Earth didn't blink. No missiles were launched. No ships were sent up, not yet. The humans waited, hands on triggers. Minds locked in cold silence. Vale stared at the sky, knowing what was about to happen. Not a battle, not a fight, but a moment of truth for both species. And if Zarnok couldn't understand the meaning of Earth's silence, they were about to learn it the hardest way possible. Asterisk at 3:21 Earth time. The sky changed. Stars that had quietly blinked above the desert suddenly vanished. Covered not by clouds but by shadows, Zarnuk's ships had arrived. Vale stood outside the bunker, looking up in silent fear. 5 massive vessels now floated above Earth like black moons. They did not hide. They didn't need to. Each ship carried enough plasma to level continents, each one shining with arrogance. Sleek hulls, glowing engines. To the Zarnok High Command, this was not a war, it was a performance. A show of dominance. But Earth didn't play along. There were no sirens, no screaming civilians, instead calm. Global defense systems activated. Like a single heartbeat. Satellites turned, radars locked, codes were whispered between continents. Cole stood in the command tent, arms crossed. He looked at the screen that showed the Zarnok fleet, then tapped a single key. A message was sent to every base on Earth. Shield Protocol Alpha, stand by. Vale stood beside him, whispering. Maybe they'll send a message first. Cole didn't look away from the screen. They already have, he said. That's what those ships are. Seconds later, one of the Zarnok ships powered its main cannon. A bright red glow pulsed at the center, humming with deadly energy. It aimed not at a military base, but at a forest, an empty one. It was a warning shot. The blast came down like a falling sun. The earth cracked, trees vaporized. The air caught fire. The shockwave traveled for miles. Birds dropped from the sky. But Earth didn't respond, not with panic, but with calculation. Are you going to let them do this? Vale shouted. Cole raised a hand to silence him. Not yet, he said. Let them make one more mistake. On the Zarnok flagship, Admiral Threx leaned back in his seat. They did nothing, he laughed. Primitive creatures. He gave the next order. Prepare for a low-orbit strike. But before his crew could respond, the ship's controls locked up. Screens went dark. Alarms screamed. Their main system had been breached. Back on Earth, Cole looked at a soldier and nodded. Release K-77 grid. From deep in Earth's orbit, hidden satellites lit up. They weren't flashy, not giant lasers or glowing beams. Just silence, until one by one, Zarnok ships started shutting down. Their engines froze, shields vanished, weapons jammed. Then, one ship exploded, not by attack, but from its own power failing. The second ship was struck by a kinetic rod dropped from orbit. A rod of metal traveling at Earth's gravity, speed struck like a god's hammer. No flames, no sound, just impact. The sky turned white. Zarnok's ships tried to scatter, but it was too late. Earth's defense was already inside their systems. Not brute force, precision. In under 43 seconds, 4 of the 5 ships were gone. The last one turned and fled. Engines burning at full power, but as it passed Earth's upper atmosphere, it received a single signal from Earth's Central Command. Don't come back. Vale stood frozen, his knees weak. He had trained in warfare his whole life, Zarnok's best scout, but he had never seen anything like this. They didn't even send soldiers, he whispered. Cole nodded. Why send men when math can end a war? Zarnok had brought fire, but Earth had shown silence can be sharper than blades. They didn't fight. They finished. Cole turned to Vale and said, This is why we don't start wars. Not because we can't win, but because if we ever do, there won't be anyone left to lose. As Earth's sky cleared, the stars returned, quietly, as if nothing had happened. But for Zarnok, the message had been carved into memory. A species they thought were emotional, chaotic, and soft had just destroyed their best war fleet without blinking. Vale opened his recorder with shaking hands. Day 15. The Zarnok attack has failed. Earth responded with silence and mathematics. They showed power without pride. They defended without cruelty. This is not a planet of warriors. This is a planet of restraint, he paused, then added, I fear what happens if someone pushes them too far again. The sun rose quietly over the earth. The air was still. The skies clear, as if the battle had never happened. Birds flew, campfires crackled, and children in distant cities played as usual. But in orbit, the wreckage of Zarnok's pride floated. Like broken glass, Vale stood at the edge of the human camp. His eyes stared upward, toward the stars he once called home. But Zarnok wasn't home anymore, not after what they had done, not after what they had learned. Cole walked up behind him, holding 2 cups of steaming coffee. "Still staring?" he asked, handing one over. Vale nodded slowly. "They were warned," he said. "They refused to listen." Cole sipped his drink. "They always do," he said softly. "But Earth doesn't shout. We show." Vale sat on a rock and pulled out his recorder. He had one last report to send, not to Zarnok Command, but to every peaceful outpost, every neutral colony across the stars. He spoke calmly, each word like a blade. "This message is for all species watching. You wonder why humans avoid war. You laugh at their dancing, their love for music, their obsession with small things. You call them soft, fragile, emotional." He looked at Cole, who was now helping another soldier plant a flag in the dirt. "You are wrong. Humans do not avoid war because they fear losing. They avoid war because they fear what winning looks like. They've seen the edge of extinction and turned back on their own. They've built weapons that could shatter planets and then lock them away, not because they're weak, but because they're wise. We came here thinking they were children playing with metal, but we were the children. They were the ones who grew up." He ended the recording with one final sentence. "If you seek war with Earth, understand this. They won't fight you to prove something. They'll end you to stop something." He sent the message across deep space channels, encrypted and urgent. Let the galaxy know Earth was not to be challenged, not because they demand power, but because they understand the weight of it. Later that day, Vale stood before a council of Earth generals and scientists. He told them everything: Zarnok's pride, their blindness, their collapse, and then he did something no Zarnok had ever done before. He bowed. "I would like to stay," he said, "not as a spy, but as a student." Cole clapped him on the back and smiled. "Then your first lesson starts now," he said. "What lesson?" Cole looked at the horizon. How to build something instead of break it. Weeks passed. Vale helped translate Zarnok language, build peace bridges, and warn others. He worked with humans not as enemies, but as allies, and when new visitors came to Earth, they didn't bring fleets or threats. They brought questions, they brought respect. Because now the galaxy knew the truth. The most terrifying weapon in the universe was a species that could destroy everything, but chooses every single day. Not 2,